Hey guys, Alex here, ajnashville.com, here with our friend and co-host, Mr. Greg Pease.
I'm excited to be here as I am on every time I get to be on here, drop a nugget of information on you guys. And today we are going to talk about the value that we all know, we're going to talk about getting out of that comfort zone. And we all know how important that is. We all know what it is. But today we're going to break it down a little bit. Like, what holds us there? What does getting out of it mean? What kind of things can we do to get out of it? And by the time we get done, we're going to have you guys all fired up.
Yeah, hopefully, again, it's like any other podcast that we do. You know, hopefully you take something from this, and hopefully it's something that pushes you a step forward, whether it be in career, life, whatever that may look like for you. Obviously, our objective here is time well spent to help you get to the next level. Just like Greg said, you know, everything takes it kind of takes that step to get out of the comfort zone. You know, something as simple as like a podcast, for example. The first podcast I did, it's like, what are you going to talk about? You know, maybe I shouldn't do this podcast. Maybe I should avoid this. And every podcast after that too. I mean, there's a certain level of getting out of your comfort zone because it's like, hey, I have to deliver content that people are going to listen to, analyze, and critique potentially. Mm-hmm. You know, so getting out of your comfort zone isn't something that necessarily like, hey, you take this imaginary step out and boom, you're free. I mean,
man, that's important to note. Keep going.
It's a day-to-day. Like when I envision comfort zone, I envision this bubble, you know, and I envision like, imagine a bubble that you're in and you're sticking your arm out. You're like, okay, I'm a little bit out. Okay, now let me put my foot out. And you're like, all right, I'm all the way out, you know? Kind of like diving into a pool. You stick your hand in and then your brother comes and pushes and you're like, bro, now I'm scared of the pool.
Yeah. So. But I'm glad you brought that up because I believe expectations are extremely important to what we're going to hold ourselves accountable to. And if you guys heard me say it before, of course. And the big thing is like when we talk to you today, we are promoting you to get out of that bubble, that comfort zone. We're promoting that to you and we're here to help you. So one might have adopted a belief that it's that once you get out of the comfort zone that everything's going to be good, that's the positive motion. Right. But the realistic expectation is it's going to be scary outside of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
You're going to have new challenges.
Yep. And the other thing that we talked about, and we talked about this offline, is, you know, sometimes that wanting to stay in the comfort zone could be because you're afraid of how people outside will judge you, you know?
Yeah, we did, and that's important.
And it could be that you have a circle of people that are okay with being in their comfort zone, but you seek to get out of it. You know, I'm a visionary person. Like everything has a thought, and I know you know this about me. Everything has a metaphor to it.
Yeah.
You know, but I envision like these cows that are kind of like looking out of the fence, and they're like, "Ooh, I'd rather go over there." But then you have the buddies that are in the middle of the yard, and they're like, I'm not going up towards that fence. Last time I got there, I got shocked. You know, because it's an electric fence, and so they almost judge you like, "Hey, Greg, don't go up to that fence. You're gonna get zapped." Well, yeah, I just want to see what's on the outside of it. You know. And so getting out of your comfort zone sometimes is outside influence that's keeping us there. But another thing, and this was powerful that you brought up, is sometimes it's our inability to believe in ourselves enough to know that we're able to get out of our comfort zone and achieve the things that we're looking to do without, you know, and do so successfully, I should say.
And fear allows us to... or we allow ourselves in the face of fear to at some level, whatever that comfort zone is, and understand. I mean, it could be any area of your life. Okay, and we're not talking about a specific area, but that comfort zone, it's comfortable because we know every piece of that comfort zone.
Right.
And if you're at the absolute pinnacle of whatever it is you're going for, then yeah, protect that comfort zone and teach others how to get to that place.
Yeah.
But if we know, most of us know that we don't need, right? You don't have to do more because you need more money. You don't have to do more because you need anything. You have to do more because you have God-given potential that you have not maxed out on.
Well, you have to do more because you have and this ties into exactly what you're saying, but you have a talent, you have an ability, you have a gift that was given to you with the expectation that you're going to excel and spread this gift amongst people.
Share it with everybody. Right. Every single one of you listening today has a gift. Some of you have figured out what your gift is, and your job is now to harness that gift and develop that gift. Some of you are not even sure what it is, and your job is just to learn what your gift is. Every single one of you have a gift, and you most likely were given your gift through one of the hardest times in your life.
Yeah. And hardest times varies for individuals. That's the one thing, again, you and I have talked about this before. That's a good thing. We've had a lot of conversations like this. But sometimes the gift comes from hardships in life that nobody else will experience. Literally, nobody else has been, well, I shouldn't say nobody else. The majority have not been through X, but it is your responsibility as an individual, because you have survived through X, to share it with individuals that may come across that same circumstance or may have gotten across it, but are not quite ready to come out of the comfort zone to discuss it as openly as we are. Like, let's face it, dude. There's not a whole lot of people that have been through some of the things that you and I have that will willingly get online and share it with the world. And
that's
I don't
extremely
care,
powerful, extremely powerful.
Right.
And I was talking to someone the other day about how, and my belief is that you're going to share some of what I'm suggesting. So as a child, we all know, we talked about the story before, abused as a child, physically, psychologically. I had no friends at school. I was an absolute weirdo. And at the time, maybe that was challenging. I don't know. That was 25 years ago, 30 years ago. I don't know what that was.
Right.
But what I know today is I'm not dependent upon the other people's acceptance of me. So that makes me easy to hop on here. But the point that I'm getting at, and I thought was I'm so glad you brought that up. Mm-hmm. We get gifts from some of the darkest things we've been through, and instead of telling people, oh, just instead of everyone else that I know having to go through that, it's my responsibility to share that gift since I already went through it.
Right. And the other thing is too is a lot of people say, get out of your comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone. That's a hoorah, hoorah, get out of your comfort zone. And at the end of the day, like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Because you can say it, like I can say all these motivational passages and just, okay, yeah, you'll take it and it is what it is, but how do you do that? And I think that's something that as individuals we have to identify. What is it that's holding us back? Is it a fear? Is it a fear of failure? Is it a fear of inability? Is it a fear of being judged? Because once we can get to a point, let's face it wasn't your whole life that you just said, screw it. I don't care what anybody thinks of me. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. So at some point in your lifetime, you said, you know what? I don't care. I'm just going to do it. Yep. And so maybe your blockage would have been the fact that you were afraid of being judged, and that's what kept you in this bubble that I talked about earlier. Or maybe, I see this a lot because kids, and you have young kids as well, but kids have a fear. You put them on a bicycle, and Daddy, don't let me go, don't let me go. There's a fear that they're not going to be able to balance that bike. And then you kind of trick them, and you just let them go. And then they look back, they're like, oh, shoot. And
they got it,
but they got it.
Yeah. The confidence begins right there. But the thing was, they had to, and I like what you said, like, what is getting out of it? Because that's important to note, because it's not just like a chant, a motivational raw chant, get out of that bubble zone. But what is that strategic move that you're going to do? But it's important to note that understanding, just because we're getting out of the comfort zone, we're not suggesting, I'm going to use your analogy. I like analogies too. Yeah. So just because we're suggesting to get out of the comfort zone, I'm going to go back to the kids. I do have little kids at home. Yeah. So I'm not suggesting that my kids should go out and figure it out, give it a shot, try to ride the bike, because they are going to fall. Right. But the important part to note is that, and we talked about another podcast, figure out what it is that you want to achieve. Mm-hmm. There's someone that already achieved it. Getting out of the comfort zone might just be going to have that conversation with that person. Yeah.
Or educating yourself to some degree.
Educating yourself. What is, and that's, it's important to note when you said, what does getting out of the comfort zone look like? Yeah. It doesn't look like you going to risk a large investment. Right. It doesn't look like you going to make this massive move of risk. I mean, if you got, whatever the case may be, you should not be putting your family at risk. Getting out of your comfort zone might literally mean having that conversation or educating yourself how to get to the next place.
Yeah, I want to talk about, actually, it's funny that you bring that up. So there was a guy, I don't know if most of you, I hope you've seen this movie. If not, it's definitely a movie that you need to watch, and that is The Pursuit of Happiness. Have you ever seen that?
Of course.
So amazing movie. Like, that is, for me, that is one of my top probably 5 favorite movies, because it reminds me of getting out of your comfort zone. If you remember correctly, or maybe I should say if I remember correctly, let me get out of my comfort zone here when I say this. The thing is the bosses that you had to hit a certain quota towards the end. This is when Will Smith was actually in there, and he was dialing, he was calling, he was trying to reach people on this list. And to get out of that portion of that comfort zone is they wanted you to start at the bottom of the list and work your way to the top. And the question was, why do you want me to start at the bottom? Well, because then you warm up, and then the big fish are at the top. Well, what he did was go in reverse and started at the top. So he started with the big fish, and he had to burn all his eggs out, ahead of time. But instead of working his way up, he saw success because he says, I got to do this the other way. I don't have the time between picking my son up and doing all this other stuff. I have to start at the top if I'm going to make it. And so he started at the top. And then one other thing that I note that this part of the message doesn't really get passed when they talk about Will Smith and the character. And forgive me, I can't remember the character's name. But the other thing he did is he wouldn't hang up the phone, because he figured it took an extra like 2 seconds to hang the phone up and pick it back up and put it back up to his ear. So instead, he'd keep it in his ear, hit it with his finger, dial the number, boom, off to the next. Hit it with his finger, dial the number, boom, off to the next. The thing is he was really willing to sacrifice and learn what it took to be successful and step out. So instead of him making $50 a day, he may have made $100. And we can all agree that if you're making $100 a day, but the norm is 50, you're probably stepping outside of your comfort zone in some area to do that.
You're probably twice as likely to meet success than the guy doing 50
100%,
calls.
100%. Yeah, I mean, there's logistically, the what is it? The rule of averages or the law of averages. Like, you are going to see more success because you've put in more work.
And what's crazy, and we're using that movie as an analogy in calls, but this isn't about calls.
Right.
But what's more is the guy that made 50 calls and the guy that made 100 calls, the guy that made 50 calls felt more weight than the guy that made 100 calls.
100%.
He literally felt more weight. The guy that made 100 calls, first of all, he's going to have success to back it on, so it tastes good.
Right.
But secondly, you're not going to go home and be like, man, I'm the guy that made 100 calls, let's say he had no success, right? No wins that day. He's not going to go home and be like, man, I wish I stopped at 50. Those extra 50 calls really hurt me.
Right.
No, he's going to be empowered. He's going to know that he's capable of, because he stepped out of that comfort zone.
Well, and the other thing, too, that you just brought up, so the failure portion. So he allowed himself more failure opportunities as well. Yep. Which is, again, comfort zone. Look, I've done phone sales where you get on the phone, you have no idea who's on the other end, and you're calling, you're like, hey, Greg, and you don't know what to say. You don't know how they're going to answer, but you have to move yourself out of that comfort zone in order to do it. And then when you hang up after you're getting yelled at or whatever, you got to be able to pick up the phone and dial again.
Go again.
Go again, 100%. But again, like Greg said, we're not talking about dialing. We're talking about just this comfort zone where, you're going to get smacked in the face. There's no question about it. You're going to step out. Michael Jordan didn't just step out on the court, and a lot of people listening know this, that he didn't even make his high school basketball team. But Here we are, greatest basketball player that ever lived within his time. I'm not going to sit here and have a debate about new basketball players or anything like that, but he was known as the greatest basketball player of his time, and he couldn't even get accepted on his high school basketball team. Imagine being smacked in the face, and nothing says you can't do this, like not being accepted by this small group of people.
Yep.
Only to make it to the national and the world stage as the best. Like, imagine you got smacked in the face and you got back up and you said, you know what? That hurt. But I'm just going to do it better, Dude,
I love this saying that Winston Churchill, some people probably like that guy, some people probably hate that guy. He was quite a character. But he had some outstanding quotes. He's been quoted with saying some incredible things and some funny things. He said that you're never going to make it to your destination if you stop to throw stones at every barking dog. Pause and think about that for a second. Michael Jordan, when he was told no in high school, was a barking dog.
Yeah.
He said, bro, that's not my dog. I gotta keep going. Like,
right.
Cool. That dog barking ain't got nothing to do with me. That was a projection of what they seen. That is not a example of my potential. And if that statement that I just said wasn't true, Michael Jordan wouldn't be Michael Jordan.
Right. Exactly. No, 100%. There would be no debate of the greatest basketball player that's ever lived,
But he didn't stop for the analogy of, he didn't stop for the barking dog in high school when they said no.
Yeah.
He knew that he had more potential, and once again, he knew accurately.
Right.
And he went out, and he continued to stay out of that comfort zone, to put himself out there, and to continue to better himself.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. I want to fall back to one thing we talked about, and that's identifying. So what I would ask, and Greg, you may have a different ask of the people that are listening today, but what I would ask of you is identify one thing that is currently keeping you from achieving the level of success that you want to achieve. Now, bear in mind, when I say level of success, I'm not necessarily talking about monetary success. Maybe it's you want to have a better relationship with your father. Maybe you want to have a better relationship with your children. Maybe you just want to get outside and start running. Whatever that looks like, identify what it is that you want to accomplish next, and then identify the things keeping you from accomplishing those things. And I want you to identify the things that you can physically, mentally, and emotionally control, because those are the things that are keeping you right now. So it may be the fact that, hey, I'm overweight. I don't want to get out and run because when I run, it hurts my knees. Okay, why does it hurt your knees? Well, it hurts your knees because you're overweight. Well, now we have this vicious cycle. So maybe you start walking. So instead of running, you walk. But identify some of those things and start to work towards whatever your goal. And when you identify and you push forward and you get smacked in the face, I did this. I went for a brisk walk one night. And I'm like, I'm going to take my dog with me, and I'm going to put a weighted vest on. You know, I'm sure I looked like I was scouting out the neighborhood. You know, people are like, where's his AR at? But the dog ran the other direction and twisted my knee. And when it twisted my knee, it's like, that was a failure point. It's like, okay, now it hurts for me to walk. You know, those that know that I have all kinds of metal and stuff in my knee and in my legs in general. But that was a failure point. And what a person should do is when they heal up and they feel better, they go out and they start walking again. Not say, you know what, last time I walked, I got hurt. I shouldn't walk anymore. So what are you going to do? You're going to crawl for the rest of your life?
Right.
So do yourself and us as speakers, do us a favor. Identify your goal, and then identify the things that are keeping you from achieving that goal, and start to creep out of your comfort zone and start breaking down those walls and do what you can to advance to that next goal. So...
Well, let me. Yeah. The last thoughts. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry, Jerry.
Do you have any closing thoughts? Closing thoughts with Greg Pease.
No. So I want to add on to what you said. I loved what you said, and I want to add on one piece. You said figure out what your goal is and figure out what's stopping you from getting there.
Right.
And the piece that I love that the piece that I want to add for you is, and we've talked about. We did a whole podcast about this in the past. Identify. So when we're talking, we want you. I want you to get out of your comfort zone.
Right.
Alex has shared with you. Identify what that goal is. What does getting out of the comfort zone look like? What is that goal? What is the breakdown to that? And then what I want to add on my final thoughts is who can give you the answers to that breakdown.
Yeah.
And schedule this week. Like this week. Don't just like, oh man, that's a great idea.
Right.
Like when you hear this and you identify what that breakdown is, reach out to that person and schedule a meeting with them.
Yeah.
Find out, become responsible to the knowledge.
You know, it's funny you bring that up, and I'll throw this in as my closing thought, and I'll let you rebut if you want, but if not, we'll close it out. I have a buddy of mine, very, very successful individual. Him and I used to work at the same mortgage company together for years. You know, we used to tease each other and everything else, but at some point, he skyrocketed in this direction. And him and I are still very good friends. And I hit him up one day, and this takes some humility to do. And mind you, as men or as dominant women or just humans in general, we don't necessarily have the humility to do this.
Yeah.
But what I did is I said, hey, buddy, I would really like to sit down with you over coffee one day and talk about what I can do to achieve some of the things you have achieved, or what it is that you did to achieve some of those things. Do you have time to do that? He said, yeah, bro, absolutely. How about Starbucks at this time at this location? I said, okay, cool. I went, I shut up, and I sat down and I listened to him, and I said, all right, let me have what you got.
Put it on me.
But the biggest thing is he was more than happy to share that time. You know, he was probably flattered that somebody he knows said, hey, dude, tell me how to do what you do.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, tell me how to do what you do. Like, I'm not going to walk up to Michael Jordan and be like, bro, tell me how to be the best player that's ever lived, the greatest player that's ever lived. But I may go up to him and say, hey, man, I suck at three-pointers. Show me how to shoot those. Yeah. And then I may come back and say, hey, man, I'm really bad at layups. Can you help me out here? You know, but piece by piece, take those lessons and get out of that comfort zone. You know, it's not only important for you, it's important for the people that are watching you, but it's more important for the people that are booing you too. So, anything else?
No, I appreciate everyone listening. Don't let it die in the workshop.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again for tuning in. I know we've had a couple breaks. I don't know if most of you know this. We had a big snowstorm last week, kept us from sharing a new podcast. Obviously, we're trying to keep this thing on track. If you have any suggestions or any topics you want to hear covered, by all means, check us out. Also, if you're listening to this, Greg Pease is our co-host here. Be sure to add him as a friend. Again, if you have any questions for him or I, send us a private message, right?
Absolutely.
All right,
We'd love
awesome.
to see it.
Thanks again for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.